I hate this camera. Hi, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe. Okay, back to better. If you get anything from my work, a connect, a dot, an epiphany, a mind-blown moment, a new book to read, a new author to explore, please consider supporting my work. All the links are at the bottom of the description. And I put a community post out today. I don't do that often because I don't know. But even if you don't like Valentine's Day, because I know a lot of people don't believe in Valentine's Day, but I believe in love of self, unconditional love. And I have these cute molds. So they come apart. And in the middle here, you could put a picture, you could put, like, I don't know, a lot of people do Cricut. You could Cricut your initials. I don't have a Cricut, it's expensive. And I got bills to pay and food to consume because I've come a long way in a year. I'm gonna put these up on my website. This is like a different type. And then I have a purple one that looks like the pink one with the sparkles. I have a bunch of these. These are expensive because they're really expensive to make. But if you would like one, let me know. I also have pyramids of different sizes. And I am making a bunch more of the large. A few people were asking about large. Those are incoming. I've been focusing on small and medium because the large are a little on the expensive side. Candles. This is frankincense. I had to move some of the gems out of the way. Keychains. These are, I got gems in them and organite materials in these. You'll put them on your keys. Got a whole bunch of stuff. So go check out my website. Those are not up on my website yet. You can't buy anything off my website. It's just to see. I have a lot of pyramids on the floor and I got some paintings and stuff. If you're interested in my work, go check out my website, AllyKatzkreations211.com. And if you're interested in anything or you want me to customize something for you, please email me. That's the best way you're going to get in contact with me. Hi. So before I begin Beyond Good and Evil, today I did a show with the amazing Tara Crete on SacredValley with my angelic sister, Dina Joe, and then myself. I will post a link to watch that episode in the description. Please support all the channels that I posted. They're amazing, informative, and spiritual type shows. Some of them not so much. Some of them are more political. Feel around. See, this is the people that I work with and that I connect with in the community that is amazing. I love my community that I belong to. It's not mine, but collectively. A long day. I had a long day. A long day. And I want to thank if any of the people that actually just subscribe to me for shorts, watch my videos, I want to thank you too, because I like to put shorts out to cheer people up. I know Little Thor has brought a lot of light into my life. He's an outdoor cat. He is very skittish. He doesn't like to come in, but I got him to come in today for at least an hour. It's so cold and rainy and windy and snowy outside. It breaks my heart that he is probably freezing and wet. And I do have a shelter for him outside on my deck, but if he could be inside and get some heat and warmth and love, why not? So I post short videos of him when I can get him to be photogenic. And I want to thank all those people who are matriculating down to the actual content of my channel. But if you're interested in looking at cute little kitty cat coming in and hanging out with me, go check out my shorts. And sometimes I put some ghost activity in the house up there. Okay, sorry. How to get that out of the way. Making sure things are on. Yeah, I don't know, like I get a ton of people at once that want to talk to me, and I got things to do. I love you all. This book changed my perception of things, changed my life. This next few sections are pretty damn good. In Divine Neutrality, it's looking beyond, like literally what this book is, looking beyond good and evil, seeing the both sides. In each of these passages that I've been reading, we're discovering both sides and their faults and their gains and advances. Nietzsche, I think, was way ahead of his time. He definitely channeled higher density beings. Again, some of this you gotta look at when things are written, because I do read work from way back when, in the way back when machine. And we have to understand their culture and the time of their indoctrination and what was happening around them. The movements, the political movements, and other things of that, because that steers people in their writing, especially philosophers and especially people that write esoteric occulty work. It's all based on their time frame, not ours. And most of the time we can just take the gems of wisdom that they implant in their writing and apply it to our now. So I hope that's what a lot of people do with what I say and the things that I keep reading. I think it's important, the books that I choose, to get a greater perspective. You don't need to agree with everything this man says or his work. It's plucking those gems out. It's all perception. So last I left on 42, and we're going to read section 43. Are these coming philosophers new friends of truth? That is probably enough, for all philosophers so far have loved their truths. But they will certainly not be dogmatists. It must offend their pride, also their taste, if their truth is supposed to be a truth for every man, which has so far been the secret wish and hidden meaning of all dogmatic aspirations. My judgment is my judgment. No one else is easily entitled to it. That is what such a philosopher of the future may perhaps say to himself. And pause from the book. We see this all the time. That's why I kind of stopped saying discernment, because discernment is still a judgment, even though it still applies into this time now. I'd rather go with what you're aligned with. What is your soul, what your heart, what your gut, what your head, what are you aligned with? When we start saying my judgment or my opinion, but more so my judgment, it's like an end all be all and you can't contest it. It's this is what I believe, and I don't give a shit what you believe, kind of thing. Where everybody's entitled to their own perception of truth. We take in things at the frequency and vibratory rate that our body can handle it. Our brains can read it. So if I see somebody giving me a document, I might see a greater picture than they do. Or someone shows me a video and someone's talking and the information comes to me, I might perceive it way differently from that person. And when you make a judgment on it, it's not the end all be all. And a lot of people are doing that. We can't apply a big overarching concept and apply it to all because it doesn't. Like, for example, the government of America went and did some heinous things to a lot of different countries all around the world. Most of us didn't even understand it. Most of us were children while these things were happening. And I didn't do it. I didn't vote for it. I didn't want any of those things and atrocities to happen across the world, but they still occurred under the country I live in. Should that be something to hate me and judge me on? It shouldn't. I wasn't the cause of it. The people in charge were. Just to say, stereotyping and things of that nature. We really have to be more cognizant of what we are putting our alignment in and what are the things that we are judging if you're still doing such. And how are you discerning that judgment? Are you looking at a bigger picture, or are you just like outrightly going, boom, judgment? It's just something to take into consideration. One must shed the bad taste of wanting to agree with many. I'm going to read that again because that was that good. One must shed the bad taste of wanting to agree with many. Good is no longer good when one's neighbor's mouths it. And how should there be a common good? The term contradicts itself. Whatever can be common always has little value. In the end, it must be as it is and always has been. Great things remain for the great, abysses for the profound, nuances and shudders for the refined, and in brief, all that is rare for the rare. Again, one must shed the bad taste of wanting to agree with many. And many of us stood up to that many and gave that right there to the system. I know I did. I paid dearly for it. I didn't listen to TV. I didn't listen. And I still don't to this day. I don't listen to anybody out of randomness. I don't let anything dictate how I'm going to live my life and how I'm going to go about my day. When someone presents something to me, I automatically go here into my heart to see if I align with it. And if I don't have emotional attachment to anything. If it aligns with me, then I will emotionally attach. But if not, I detach, or I just don't suck that energy in and I don't feed it either. We saw this in 2020. Everybody watched the media. Everybody fell for the trap. We have to stop agreeing with a larger picture because everybody's saying it. If you're not feeling it, if you individually are not feeling a message, if you're not feeling a movement, if you're not feeling certain aspects, stop feeding it. Stop giving it your energy. Objectively listen, but don't let it come here. and let it go outside your bubble. It's very important. Need I say expressively, after all this, that they too will be free, very free spirits, these philosophers of the future. Though just as certainly they will not be merely free spirits, but something more higher, greater, and thoroughly different that does not want to be misunderstood and mistaken for something else. But saying this, I feel an obligation almost as much to them as to ourselves, who are their heralds and precursors, we free spirits, to sweep away a stupid old prejudice and misunderstanding about the lot of us. All too long, it has clouded the concept free spirit like a fog. Sorry, not a frog, a fog. In all the countries of Europe and in America too, there now is something that abuses this name. A very narrow, imprisoned chain type of spirits who want just about the opposite of what accords with our intentions and instincts. Not to speak of the fact that regarding the new philosophers who are coming up, they must assuredly be closed windows and bolted doors. They belong briefly and sadly among the levelers, those falsely so-called free spirits, being eloquent and prophetically scribbling slaves of the democratic taste and its modern ideas. They are all human beings without solitude, without their own solitude, clumsy good fellows whom one should not deny either courage or respectable decency. Only they are unfree and ridiculously superficial, above all in their basic inclination to find in that forms of the old society, as it has existed so far, just about the cause of all human misery and failure. He is so on it. Like, pause. I'm sorry. I can't. This is so good. I read this in college, and that's almost 19 years ago. Almost 20, if you want to like estimate. Okay. The world in my viewpoint was right after I was in college when I started college at 9/11. So my view of the world is not as informed as it is now. Although I knew there was messed up shit and things were not okay, but I didn't know the extent of the history to it. And if you think about the people who dictate our reality, that even if you want to look at them as philosophers or people that are out there giving their information and their ways of thinking about how reality works, can you just imagine what I just read? How true that is? Wow. Bananas. It's crazy when you read something and you put it in the context of now. Blows your mind. Which is a way of standing truth happily upon her head. What they would like to strive for with all their powers is the universal green pasture happiness of the herd with security, lack of danger, comfort, and an easier life for everyone. The two songs of doctrines which they repeat most often are equally of rights, equality of rights, and sympathy for all that suffers. And suffering itself they take for something that must be abolished. I'm going to send you my thought and prayers. Now, although a lot of us do say that stuff to each other because we love each other and we're good people, when you hear these, we're going to send our prayers and thoughts when a catastrophe happens, a tornado rips a town up, a hurricane comes in, or an event happens, false flappy thing or not, most people say, I'm going to send you healing and prayers, and yet they actually don't put in the work to do it. They just say it to pacify people, thinking, making their appearance look better. Are they really praying for you? Are they really putting the energy to you? Probably not. I'm not discounting people that do. I know people that do. But more times than not, when you're hearing people on media, on television, speaking such, they're lying. They're not really doing it. Let's just be honest. We oppose men having opened our eyes and conscious to the question where and how the plant, man, has so far grown most vigorously to a height. We think that this has happened every time under the opposite conditions. That to this end, the dangerousness of his situation must first grow to the point of enormity. His power of invention and simulation, his spirit, had to develop under prolonged pressure and a constraint into refinement and audacity. His life will had to be enhanced into an unconditional power will. We think that hardness, forcefulness, slavery, danger in the alley and the heart, life in hiding, stoicism, the art of escape, and the deviltry of every kind, that everything evil, terrible, tyrannical in man, everything in him that is kin to beasts of prey and serpents, serves the enhancement of the species, man, as much as its opposite does. Indeed, we do not even say enough when we say only that such, and at any rate, we are at this point in what we say and keep silent about. At the other end from all modern ideology and herd decidata as their anthropods, perhaps. Is it any wonder that we free spirits are not exactly the most communicative spirits? That we do not want to betray in every particular form from what a spirit can liberate himself and to what he may then be driven. And as for the meaning of the dangerous formula beyond good and evil, with which we at least guard against being mistaken for others, we are something different from free thinkers. It's in different languages, so that's why I kind of... And whatever else all these goodly advocates of modern ideas like to call themselves, at home, or at least having been guests in many countries of the spirit, having escaped again and again from the musty, agreeable nooks into which preference and prejudice, youth, origin, the accidents of people and books, or even exhaustion from wandering, seem to have banished us, full of malice against the lures of dependence that lie hidden in honors, or money, or offices, or enthusiasms of the senses, grateful even to need and facilitating sickness, because they always rid us from some rule and its prejudice. Grateful to God, devil, sheep, and the worm in us, curious to a vice, investigators to point out of cruelty, with uninhibited fingers for the unfathomable, with teeth and stomachs for the most indigestible, ready for every feat that requires a sense of acuteness and acute senses, ready for every venture thanks to an excess of free will, with for and back souls, into whose unlimited intentions nobody can look so easily, with fore and background, which no foot is likely to explore to the end, concealed under cloaks of light, conquerors, even if we look like heirs and prodigals, arrangers and collectors from morning till night, misers of our riches and our crammed drawers, economical in learning and forgetting, inventive in schemas, occasionally proud of tables of categories, occasionally pedants, occasionally night owls of work, even broad daylight. Yes, when it is necessary, even scarecrows. And today it is necessarily, namely, insofar as we are born, sworn, jealous friends of solitude, of our own most profound, most midnightly, most midday solitude. That is the type of man we are, we free spirits. And perhaps you have something of this too. You that are coming, you new philosophers. And if that wasn't like a good preface to the Hermit's Journey, where I go into a whole other series, but I also use Nietzsche in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, talking about the journey of being in solitude. When you are living in solitude, and I have done this multiple times in my life, where I kind of shut everybody out of my world and did a lot of my inner work. 2020, 2019, 2020 was that period for me and a lot of people. It isolated us. We were the free thinkers. We were the ones who were like, get out of here. I'm not listening to your BS. But in return, because the sheep, the herd, followed the mass, and we were the ones that kind of went that way, it kind of seemed like we really were by ourselves. And many of us, literally in physicality, are by ourselves for the most part. And then we have the next level of people who are within families, but are the black sheep. They're not following everything else while their family does. That also gives you a sense of solitude because you're alone in your thoughts. You have no one to expressively vent, get out, just bounce back ideas, brainstorm things. You don't have that until you find your soul tribe. We're nothing more than free thinkers and people who are thinking abstractly, but using logic and reason in our thinking. I can think abstract ideas, but I got to bring it down to reality because that's where we are. Not somewhere in another dimension in abstract land. I'm here. Where ration and logic need to be balanced with the abstract. If anybody who is watching this has yet to listen to the Hermit's Journey, the very first one is starting at the cave. The Plato's allegory of the cave. And how it applies to our time now. How each one of us was bound by a veil of forgetting in a cave. We were frightful, not necessarily frightful, but a lot of us were chained down and didn't know where to go or who to seek out until we discovered the courage to move away. Oh, I'm going to unshackle myself. Those are just shadows. Let me get out of here. And you go through a whole whirlwind of fun until you get and you see the reflections. Reflections are nothing more than more illusions until you actually see the full truth of light. We're all walking this journey at different points and different views and different perceptions. My shadows are not what your shadows are. but they're shadows nonetheless. We all are walking very similar paths, different circumstances, different places, different soul contracts, but there's a lot more similarities than you could think. When you can see beyond that reflection, when you can see beyond the good and the evil and understand the place it holds for our expansion and our learning and our experiences to gain wisdom, we kind of treat it differently. We kind of think about it a little differently. We kind of transmute both sides and come to a neutrality point. When you come into neutral position, you're not swinging that pendulum in either pole. You're here and you're observing. You are the game changer. You change your mind. You could swing your pendulum negative or you could swing your positive. Again, this is all in the Hermetic laws, the Kabbalion. But when you're here, you can lift yourself up and look down at both sides to see which one you want to be swinging towards. You know what? And sometimes we wake up and we have a shitty day. We are overwhelmed with stimulus. We have too many people trying to grasp your energy. And not because they're horrible people. It's just they want a piece of you, which is great. Make sure you have your boundaries up. Make sure you do you to your fullest. Try to be what you anticipate this world to be. We're not going to be moving forward. Free thinkers, philosophers out there, if we can't look at both sides objectively. And I think Nietzsche does a really good job there at showing both sides. I mean, you could be the judge of that, but it's ringing true to he's talking about future. Here we are, and it's really, at least for me, connecting. This next section, what is religious? Uh-oh, we're in trouble. No. The human soul and its limits. The range of inner human experiences reach so far, the heights, depths, and distances of these experiences, the whole history of the soul so far, and its as yet unexhausted possibilities, that it is the predestined hunting ground for a born psychologist and a lover of the great hunt. But how often he has to say to himself in despair, one hunter, alas, only a single one. And look at this huge forest, this primeval forest, and then he wishes he had a few hundred helpers and good, well-trained hounds that he could drive into the history of the human soul to round up his game. In vain, it is proved to him again and again, thoroughly and bitterly, how helpers and hounds for all the things that excite his curiosity cannot be found. What is wrong with sending scholars into new and dangerous hunting grounds where their courage, sense, and subtlety in every way are required, is that they cease to be of any use precisely where the great hunt, but also the great danger begins, precisely where they lose their keen eye and nose. To figure out and determine, for example, what kind of history the problem of science and conscience has so far had in the soul of hominis religiosi, one might perhaps have to be as profound, as wounded, as monstrous as Pascal's intellectual conscience was. And then one would still need that vaulting heaven of bright, malicious spirituality that would be capable of surveying from above, arranging and forcing into formulas this swarm of dangerous and painful experiences. But who would do, but who would do me this service? But who would have time to wait for such servants? They obviously grow too rarely. They are so improbable in any age. In the end, one has to do everything oneself in order to know a few things oneself. That is, one has a lot to do. But a curiosity of my type remains, after all, the most agreeable of all vices. Sorry, I meant to say, the love of truth has its reward in heaven and even on earth. So here is the mental gymnastics I always kind of speak about, of battling yourself, your mindset. You're always looking outside of yourself for the answers, for the people, places, and things that are just going to comfort you, when in the end day, you need somebody to test you. You need somebody to be hard with you so that you can change. When we're comfortable and we're in a pattern, we tend not to want change. We tend to go with the flow and we try to not resist. But the real resistance needs to be, we need to have the easy flow of always changing, always merging. When you have just yourself, like the hermit's journey, you can go in yourself and do the work. You can self-examine. You could take your traumas, your woundings, your sufferings, and you can transmute them, heal them, release them, forgive and forget, or at least let it go. But we always have these hunters. We always have these things that we are always looking outside of ourselves for the answers. We're always seeking to not trust ourselves, and we all doubt ourselves. We are taught these things. When you only have yourself to rely on, and the only one that understands you is you, it's telling you to go in your heart, go inside, do some work. You only have yourself. Not everybody's going to get you. Not everybody's going to understand you. I so understand this. And like this book, I'm going to skip around a little bit. I marked this portion of this section. From the start, the Christian faith is a sacrifice of freedom, all pride, all self-confidence of the spirit. At the same time, enslavement and self-mockery, self-mutilation. There is cruelty and religious Phoenicianism in this faith, which is accepted of an overripe multitude and multiple of much spoiled conscience. It presupposes that the subjugation of the spirit hurts indescribably, that the whole past and the habits of such a spirit resist the absurdism which faith represents to it. Again, he was not fond of the Catholic Christian faith. Let's just put it that way. But take that as heed. Whatever on earth the religious neurosis has appeared, we find it tied to three dangerous dietary demands: solitude, fasting, and sexual abstinence. But one cannot decide with certainty what is cause and what effect, and whether any relation of cause and effect is involved here. The final doubt seems justified because among its most regular symptoms, among both savage and tame peoples, we also find the most sudden, most extravagant voluptuousness, can never get that word out, which then just as suddenly changes into our perennial spasm and denial of the world and will, both perhaps to be interpreted as masked epilepsy. But nowhere should one resist interpretation more. No other type has yet been surrounded by such a lavish growth of nonsense and superstition. No other type seems to have interested men, even philosophers, more. The time has come for becoming a bit cold right here, to learn caution, better yet, to look away, to go away. Even in the background of the most recent philosophy, that of Schopenhauer, that's one of my favorites, we find almost as the problem in itself this gruesome question mark of the religious crisis and awakening. How is the denial of the will possible? How is the saint possible? This really seems to have been the question over which Schopenhauer became a philosopher and began. And so it was a genuinely Schopenhauerian conclusion when his most convinced adherent, perhaps also the last one as far as Germany is concerned, namely Richard Wagner, finished his life's work at precisely this point, and in the end brought this horrible and eternal type on the stage as Kundre type Viku in the flesh, at the very time when the psychiatrists of almost all the countries of Europe had occasion to study it at close quarters, wherever the religious neurosis, or what I call a type that has lived, the type of this part of the book had its last epidemic outbreak and pageant in the Salvation Army. Let us ask what precisely about this whole phenomena of the saint has seemed so enormously interesting to men of all types and ages, even to philosophers. Beyond any doubt, it was the air of the miraculous that goes with it, namely the intermediate succession of opposites, of states of the soul that are judged morally in opposite ways. It seemed palpable that a bad man was suddenly transformed into a saint, a good man. The psychology we have had so far suffered shipwreck at this point. Wasn't this chiefly because it had been placed itself under the dominion of morals, because it too believed in opposite moral values, and saw, read, interpreted these opposites into the texts and facts? What? The miracle, merely a mistake of interpretation, a lack of philology. Interesting there. Before I continue, just picking out some passages here. There's a lot of people who are very religious that watch me and my channel. Not here to sway you either way of what your faith, your heart leads is where you shall go. That's the assignment you have with Source. I can't change that, nor would I want to. But a lot of people take things at literal value. Instead of having the open mind to think objectively at a situation, you're attaching emotions to some of the things and content that I put out. There are some he doesn't discredit other religions. We're going to go there. We're going there. We're going to go there. We're going there. But just know that this is a perspective. It's to be looked at objectively, to take an eagle eye view down and look at it, whether you agree with him or not. It's a perspective and interpretation thereof. So please take it as that. He attacks everything. I promise you he does. I'm just skipping to where I think we all need to have our focus. So far, the most powerful human beings have still bowed worshipfully before the saint as the riddle of self-conquest and deliberate final renunciation. Why did they bow? In him, as it were behind the question mark of his fragile and miserable appearance, they sensed the superior force that sought to test itself in such a conquest, the strength of the will in which they recognize and honor their own strength and delight in dominion. They honored something in themselves when they honored the saint. Moreover, the sight of the saint awakened a suspicion in them, such an enmity of denial, an anti-nature, will not have been desired for nothing. They said to and asked themselves, there may be a reason for it, some very great danger about which the aesthetic, thanks to his secret comforters of visitors, might have inside information. In short, the powerful of the world learned a new fear before him. They sensed a new power, a strange, as yet unconquered enemy. It was the will to power that made them stop before the saint. They had to ask him. In the Jewish Old Testament, the book of divine justice, there are human beings, things, and speeches in so grand a style that Greek and Indian literature have nothing to compare it with. With terror and reverence, one stands before these tremendous remnants of what man once was. And still, we have sad thoughts about ancient Asia and its protruding little peninsula Europe, which wants by all means to signify as against Asia the progress of man. To be sure, whoever is himself merely a manger, tame domestic animal, and knows only the needs of domestic animals, like our educated people of today, including the Christians of educated Christianity, has no cause for amazement or sorrow among these ruins. The taste for the Old Testament is a touchstone for great and small. Perhaps he will find the New Testament, the book of grace, still rather more after his heart. It contains a lot of the real, tender, musty, true believer and small soul smell. To have glued this New Testament, a kind of rococo of taste in every respect to the Old Testament, to make one book as the Bible, as the book par excellence, that is perhaps the greatest audacity and sin against the spirit. The literary Europe has on its conscience. I'll leave it at that. I'm not commenting. Why atheism today? The Father in God has been thoroughly refuted. Ditto, the judge, the rewarder. Also, his free will. He does not hear, and if he heard, he still would not know how to help. Worst of all, he seems incapable of clear communication. Is he unclear? This is what I found to be causes for the decline of European theism, on the basis of a great many conversations, asking and listening. It seems to me that the religious instinct is indeed in the process of growing powerfully, but the theistic satisfaction in it refuses the deep suspicion. For formerly one believed in the soul. As one believed in the grammar and the grammatical subject, one said, I is the condition. Think is the predicate and condition. Thinking is an activity to which thought must supply a subject as cause. Then one tried with admirable perseverance and cunning to get out of this net, and asked whether the opposite might not be the case. Think the condition, I the conditioned. I, in the case, only a synthesis which is made by thinking. At bottom, Kant wanted to prove that, starting from the subject could not be proved, nor could the object, the possibility of a merely apparent existence of the subject, the soul, in other words, may not always have remained strange to him, that thought which, as Vedanta philosophy, existed once before on this earth and exercised tremendous power. There is a great ladder of religious cruelty, with many rungs, but three of these are the most important. Once one sacrificed human beings to one's God, perhaps precisely those whom one loved most. The sacrifices of the firstborn in all prehistoric religions belong here, as well as the sacrifice of the Emperor Tiberius in the Mithras grotto of the Isle of Capri, that most gruesome of all Roman anachronisms. Then, during the moral epoch of mankind, one sacrificed to one's God, one's own strongest instincts, one's nature. This festive joy lights up the cruel eyes of the aesthetic, the anti-natural enthusiast. Finally, what remained to be sacrificed? At long last, did one not have to sacrifice for once whatever is comforting, holy, healing, all hope, all faith in hidden harmony, in future blisses and justices? Didn't one have to sacrifice God himself, and from cruelty against oneself, worship the stone, stupidity, gravity, fate, the nothing? To sacrifice God for the nothing? This paradoxical mystery of the final cruelty was reserved for the generation that is now coming up. All of us already know something of this. Truth be told. With the strength of his spiritual eye and insight grows distance, and as it were, the space around man. His world becomes more profound. Even new stars, even new riddles and images become visible for him. Perhaps everything on which the spirit's eye has exercised its acuteness and thoughtfulness was nothing but an occasion for this exercise, a playful matter, something for children and those who are childish. Perhaps the day will come when the most solemn concepts, which have caused the most fights and suffering, the concepts God and sin, will seem no more important to us than a child's toy and a child's pain seem to an old man, and perhaps the old man will then be in need of another toy and another pain, still child enough an eternal child. I'm going to leave it there, guys. That's a lot to take in. And I am not going to push much of the religiosity of these topics, not because I don't want to. I'm very passionate about it, in fact, but I don't want to get censored, or I'm not here to offend anybody either. But you got to see beyond the good stuff that your book says, and wherever you read, right, in religion, most people only preach to you what aligns with them, the quotes, the passages, whatever. But there's a lot of negativity in a lot of books without you recognizing it, or maybe your unconscious took it in. Are you really understanding that there's both good and evil in all books? Because most people only see one side. They either see the bad or the good. And some people objectively read it and just say, oh, okay, that's in there. Human sacrifice. And if you want to take it out of the esoteric context, well, that's an allegory, and this is like deeper meaning. You could do that too, but there's still good and bad in most religious books. And it's all wrapped up in a neat bow for you to unravel. Are you doing such if you're into the religion? It's interesting because we all chose a faction, a family, a race, a religion to be born into, to follow. I'm one of very few people. Now, I don't know if I'm a few. I'm sure that I'm not necessarily rare, but my parents never imposed, my adoptive parents never imposed religion on me. They asked me to try. I didn't feel any connection, and I was raised in a Jewish household. Didn't feel it. Not because I didn't try, not because I didn't hate anybody at the time. I was a child. What would I know? But I know it didn't align with my heart. And my mom finally gave up in trying to force me, or like, ask me nicely, can you try? When it just wasn't connecting with me. And I think that's one of the reasons why I chose them to be my parents, besides putting me at the house where I needed to be for the Stargate. I think I chose them also because they were not going to impose their will on me, that I did not have to go to do any specific religiosity to be a morally good human being. No, I have a lot of people who are very, very heavily into religion. And I just ask you, if you're watching this, to take an objective view. I'm not here trying to disrespect you, but I'm here to give a perspective, because a lot of people are unaware of how deep and dirty almost all religions are. The undertones and the underlayers that are being exposed very slowly are coming to light, and that is where a lot of you guys are going to be pushed to your precipices of understanding. And it's not to collectively say like Christianity's bad, but there's a lot of death and murder in its name. Now, thou shalt not kill. Oh, thou shalt not kill our own kind necessarily. But you had the Inquisition, you had the Crusades. You are forcing other people and forcing your will upon them. You are burning witches at the stake. I would say that that's sacrifice, and that's a lot of murder that's against God's will, if you want to believe in the religiosity of it. Oh, well, they're heretical. Well, why Compassion and grace. What did Yeshua teach? You only apply, and most people do this, you only apply what you want to apply to a situation from a quote. But are you looking at a totality sense of really what words were really spoken? Because I bet you they were not what it says in the books. Why do I say that? Because scribes wrote the Bible and other books. It's not hearsay. Most people back in that age and time had archaic language. There was Aramaic, Latin. Greek and Hebrew were in its infancy. Most people chiseled stuff on a wall and drew pictures, right? The interpretation of words and their translations into different languages is all skewed. We got to be very careful when interpreting what a book says, especially a religious one. We want to know that someone died for your sins. I don't believe in sins. I don't believe in original sin, because guess what? We were born innocent. We were born with the God spark within us, came here with the purpose. I wasn't born unclean. I don't need to go and lay in and get baptized to be a purely good person. You could think that. I have family members that refuse to talk to me because they're not being compassionate and they're not having grace. They speak and preach Jesus all day long, but yet they can't look back in their own lives and see how many times they really royally fell, and how they think their sins are going to be washed away and be excused. Nothing gets excused. You signed up for an experience. Did you learn from it? Are you giving others and showing compassion and grace? Are you looking at the other side of the coin when it comes to your beliefs? What was done in the name of your beliefs? How many lives were lost in your name of beliefs? He's just pointing it out in his work, and it's worded in a very meticulous way, philosopher's way. You can get lost into it, but he brought it. He keeps bringing it. I have almost all of his books in my collection because I think he's one of somebody that people really hate, but yet he has a lot to say, and that's probably why people hate him. They lose the context of what he's trying to convey. And Schopenhauer is one of my favorites. The World as Will and Representation brought me out of such a funk. These guys made me think differently. It changed my perception of the world. It made me view things differently, not in a bad way, but it changed the way I looked at things. It made me ask myself deeper questions. It asked me to look further into things, analyze, see the value in life, but also know what other people take in that value. Philosophy is one of those crazy things that you either like or you really hate. I am one of the hugest philosophy lovers. I love philosophy. Metaphysics falls into that area realm. But to understand how people were dissecting and taking apart how we think, the will, put the power of will, it's your intention. It's what you're thinking. It's what you're trying to manifest. These guys understood all these components. They understood the science behind it too. It's very eye-opening. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know for myself that I always enjoy reading his work, and I always enjoy having thought-provoking conversations, at least. Sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protection energy. The weather is really bad outside. It is going to be in the negative degrees coming up this weekend, sorry. So please make sure you are warm. If things happen, you reach a place where you can get heat and food and warmth for those of you in the upper United States having this cold blast. And even for you people down south, I know that the cold is coming. So just be mindful. Take extra rest, drink extra water. I am nothing but like consuming water all day. Tea. I did have coffee this morning. I needed it. I got home at 5 in the morning. I did sleep, but it was a very dangerous ride home. Like I really need a new vehicle, and I need a 4-wheel drive vehicle. And I need one that's a little heavier than what I have, because I have a front wheel drive. Anywho, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please visit my website. And if you're interested in any of my work, I'm very friendly. Try to be at least. Please contact me in an email if you're interested in any of my work. I work with people financially. I try to do everything at cost when I price things out. So you know that I know what I'm putting into the work is what I am charging. I'm not really charging for my labor. I'm really at cost of materials and then shipping. Maybe $5 extra. Like that's all I'm getting. So I'm trying to be more on the end of I'm trying to get the healing energy and the inspiration out. So I hope to see you guys on the next one. Please be safe, be seen. And I want to thank everybody for subscribing to my channel and keeping on this journey that I'm going on and being a part of the ride with me. Until next time, guys.